You are at the intersection of wealth, health, and happiness. Welcome to the Wealthy Wellthy Life. Welcome to the Wealthy Wellthy Life. I'm Krisstina Wise, where I interview thought leaders who teach a countercultural approach to money, health, and happiness, because a good life is a wealthy, wealthy life. Today, I interview Kristine Hassler. Kristine is awesome. She's a best-selling author and life coach, and she really is passionate about teaching people how to live a very full, awesome, good life. She loves to focus on the happiness piece and tackle and look at things that get in the way of being happy, i.e., setting too many expectations, where we want to set these expectations, or where we expect life to turn out a certain way, or expect things out of relationships. And ultimately, having a lot of expectation is the secret for unhappiness instead of happiness. So we talk about having a toxic relationship with oneself and how to reverse that. We talk about embracing emotional pain and why we're not supposed to be happy all the time. So it's sort of getting comfortable being uncomfortable. We talk about having it all is an idea that many of us, is a part of our culture. We think happiness is about having it all. And she challenges that idea and moves it towards versus the thought of what do we need to do to have it all? What about just being our all? And we talk about money. We sort of delve into the money conversation and how sometimes our relationship money can be a reflection of our own self-worth. Ouch. And we talk a little bit about what I like, that really what I try to pull out of her is this spiritual psychology. Like, she approaches psychology. She's like, psychology really is her expertise, but she moves in this realm of what she calls spiritual psychology. And we really talk about that. And it's a really awesome part of the conversation. And then finally, we talk about her other expertise, which is generational diversity. And she shares some really great tips for how Gen Y and Gen X can bridge this generational gap and really learn how to work together powerfully. And it's really fun. I learned a lot in that part of the conversation alone. So enjoy. Kristine, it's so fun being here with you today. Thank you for coming over. You're just showing up here at the Wealthy Wellthy Life headquarters as you're visiting Austin from LA.
Yes, it's awesome to be here. This is an amazing view and the energy here is great. And I think I just might start coming over every day.
Well, you can come over anytime. I'm really excited to talk to you today. We were introduced from both of our mutual friend, Lori Marrero, that we just love and adore. So anyway, a public thank you to her for her introducing me to you, because you're amazing. And just your energy. I mean, you clearly live what you teach, teach what you live, and are just inspired to live a really good life and really impact that, impact others and share that with everyone you come in contact with. So anyway, as we talk, I want to talk a little bit about that and share a little bit. I know when we had dinner, you shared a little bit about your background, but you haven't always been this way. You haven't always been inspired, positive thinker, manifester of your own life and dreams. And in fact, it was started a little bit opposite, right?
Very opposite. And I'm so grateful for that. The shorter story is, like everyone, when I was born, I knew there was nothing wrong with me and the world was at my fingertips and I was whole and complete. And also, like everyone, then things happened and I started to form limiting beliefs and a story about who I was and the way life worked, and moved less out of that awareness of love and connection and more into fear, doubt, and judgment. And that happens to most of us. It's kind of part of the human experience. And part of the story that I created was I am unlikable and I don't belong, because there was a lot of teasing and things that happened at school. So I felt very, very separate. And I compensated for that by being an extreme overachiever. So I moved from an inside out to an outside in orientation to life very early in my life, meaning I looked to things outside of me and outside things for my identity, for my security, to make me feel better about myself, all those kinds of things. And the tricky thing about this, and some of your listeners may relate to this, is being an incredibly hard on yourself overachiever actually can get you a lot of success, depending on how you define success. It can get you great grades and entry into an amazing college and moving up your career track very quickly, like I did. I graduated from the top of my high school, went to a great college, graduated in 3.5 years with a double major, and like all insecure people with something to prove, moved out to Hollywood because that's where you go, and worked my way up there. And I was the youngest ever female agent. And again, this drive got me a lot of results. But internally, I was so hard on myself that I didn't even realize how toxic my relationship with myself was. And I was consistently looking for the next promotion or the next relationship or this much more money and living life like a checklist. And I kept checking things off the list, but was not feeling a sense of satisfaction. And this is something that a lot of people experience. But then when you do, if your whole operating system is you do things to make you feel a certain way, you try to keep doing things. But I sort of ran out of things to do. And in about 7 months, I had what I call my quarter life crisis. I ended up resigning from my successful Hollywood job. I was estranged from my family. I got diagnosed with an undiagnosable autoimmune disorder. I went into tens and thousands of dollars worth of debt. And then I got dumped by my fiance 6 months before my wedding. So everything that I clung to for security, safety, control melted away. And I had my bathroom floor moment of, what am I doing? Do I even want to be here anymore? And that's when I had what I call a God moment. And honestly, Krisstina, I wasn't particularly spiritual at the time, but I had this feeling that I could not describe, and it felt spiritual. But it only lasted for a moment because my mind came in. I had a very, very active mind, like go, go, go all the time, dealt with depression, anxiety, was medicated for those things. So that God moment I had was this feeling of just overwhelming peace, and everything I was looking for on the outside, I felt on the inside. So that was the turning point for me, because it was a short but profound enough of an experience for me to make a promise. And the promise that I made to the powers that be, whatever I believed in at the time, was if I figure my way out of this suffering, I will dedicate my life to helping other people. And it's amazing when you make a commitment like that, that comes not from the mind, but from the heart, and also comes from the not knowing how. And I think my whole life, and a lot of the people that I coach, they feel a calling, but because they don't know the how, they don't know the form, they get scared, or they disregard it, or they stall and wait till they know the form, or they have the courage, or whatever. And sometimes we just have to make the commitment, not knowing the how, because that's the only way that the how is sometimes revealed. You know, we hear stories of leaps of faith, and they sound really sexy and inspirational, but there's a free fall, like when you take a leap of faith. Like for a while, you can kind of just be floating and flailing along until things start to click. And that's how it was for me. I took this leap and woke up with the idea for my first book, and one step led to another. And everything that I do now, none of it was planned. Not one single aspect of my career was quote unquote planned.
So this defining moment of, and I know I can totally relate to that story. And before I had my crisis, very much everything is a checklist. And I was very driven by happiness is there.
Yep.
So when I get there, I'll be happy. When I have enough money, I'll be happy. When I get that level of status, when I win that award.
Right.
But then it's the driver's always what's next, what's next, what's next. And it's a place of never being present, never being checking in of how am I really doing?
How am I really doing?
It's a really great numbing strategy for never really having to take a look at how am I?
Yeah. I think work and success is one of the most ignored but socially acceptable addictions. And it can be an addiction, truly, and a way to, because an addiction is anything that distracts us from feeling and really being present. And I know what we're saying isn't new information for most people. I mean, people cognitively know my happiness doesn't come from the outside, yet it's really hard to give up what you're chasing. Because the thing that I have found is that in order to make that change in orientation from the outside in to the inside out, you have to be willing to do some pretty gnarly work on yourself. And that's really what stops people. It's not that people don't know my happiness doesn't come from the outside. It's that you have to go inside and look at your shadow and look at your issues and look at all the things you've been covering up or numbing or distracting yourself from, and go in and feel them and heal them and deal with them. And to me, that's really the obstacle, not lack of awareness. It's the lack of really the courage and the willingness and the vulnerability to do the work, because that depth of work and that willingness to do work requires letting go of control. And talk about it, another addiction, like that's the master. And it's scary. And so I have so much, one of the things that moves me for my work is I have like such deep compassion for the human experience. Deep compassion. It's beautiful, and there's so many amazing things about being human, but there's pain and there's suffering. And I took a year of Texas history in school, but no one taught me how to deal with my feelings. No one taught me how to change my belief systems. No one taught me how to not take on other people's expectations of me, or about shame, or any of those things. And I feel like that's really the education we're missing.
Absolutely. And I really love what you hit on there, that there is pain and suffering. And by numbing it or ignoring it doesn't allow us to internalize and to really sit with the source of those feelings. And if we never address them, we can't reach that place of maybe more spiritual enlightenment or connectivity, and be able to let go, because you have to be, the only way to fully let go of all that control that we so desperately try to hold on to is we have to have that faith where there is no control. And the only way I think we can have that is we have to connect to that. But we have to be able to sit with some of that pain or suffering or work through it. And we're in this society, I think, and that's what I want to ask you of the pain is bad. We're like, we should feel shame, or there's all this goodness around us all the time. So how dare that you have a tough moment or feel ashamed or these different things. So how do people, that's great to think I should really sit with this, but what sort of coaching or advice do you have to help people move that direction?
Right. Well, I know
because everything in society is saying, go make more money, go be more successful, be a better entrepreneur, be a better person, build more stuff. I mean, everything's more. Be
more happy.
And do it faster. And there's more out there. And like, how do we just move away from that and come just sit here?
Right. Well, I know you bust myths on the show. So this is one that we're busting, is this whole, we're supposed to be happy all the time. And as humans, we learn through contrast. Like, I know what's hot because I know what's cold. I know light because I know dark. I know joy because I've known deep sorrow. And that's one of the things we're here to experience on earth, is the polarity of that experience. So it's actually not the emotions that are bad or the pain that's bad. It's the judgment we put on it and the shame we put on it. Because if you look at little kids, they have, one of the things I teach in Expectation Hangover is how to have an adult temper tantrum, like how to really ride the waves of your emotions all the way through, because kids aren't ashamed of their emotions. And if you don't interrupt them, when they have a big feeling or they're in pain, they cry it out. And if they have a full-on temper tantrum, they yell, they scream, it reaches a peak, and then it comes down, they start to whimper, and then they end up soothing themselves, and they're fine. They're over it. But as we get older, we start suppressing and we start judging. And when something happens to us that's painful, we not only judge the experience, but we judge ourselves for the feelings that we're having. So much of the healing process is learning how to feel our emotions with compassion rather than judgment and analysis. I call it releasing our emotions rather than recycling them, because we recycle whenever we judge, analyze, want to get over it, and block that feeling from coming through. And I think the other reason is we're just terrified. We're so terrified of our pain and our shadow. Like, I talk to so many people, and I get it. I was on antidepressants for 20 years of my life. So I know what it's like to numb and to not feel. And then also to be so scared that if I really let myself feel, I'll never get out of it. And I had to walk that journey when I finally got off medication. And so that fear of, will I ever be able to get to the other side, stops a lot of people. But what I can honestly say is that we have all the inner resources we need to really be able to heal and get through everything. And unfortunately, we're conditioned, like you were saying, with we should use all of our resources to do more, be more, have more. And we don't balance that out by using our resources to really heal more, right? And look inside more. And I think kind of as a society as a whole, we're addicted to stuff and to doing. And because so many of us don't know who we really are, our identity depends on what we do, how much money we make, who we're with, those kinds of things. So unless you have a strong sense of identity and knowingness of who you are, it's frightening to not go for those things.
Absolutely. So you talk about this in your book and in a lot of your material, is this distinction between this desire to have it all to this being more intentional about being it all. So what do you mean by that?
Well, I'm not against having great stuff and doing amazing things in the world and sharing through your career and having money to have a certain lifestyle and impact people. That's all amazing. It's just, my concern is more the place inside it's coming from. Is it coming from compensating for something because you think that's where your sense of worth and value comes from? Because if so, then it's just about having stuff, and enough will never be enough. So to me, having stuff is more about getting, and being our all to create stuff is more about giving. How I think about it for myself is everything that I create in the external world is an expression of my unique gifts and who I really am. And that's what I mean by that inside out orientation and being my all. I had to strip away the story of who I thought I needed to be. I had to strip away that story of not belonging, being unlikable, and having something to prove. And I had to strip away motivation and drive as being the thing that got me up every day by being hard on myself. And my relationship with myself has been my most challenging relationship, honestly. And shifting to really not just loving myself, because that's nice, frou-frou, oh, let's all love ourselves and sing kumbaya, but liking myself, being a friend to myself, allowing noticing when I have my irritable moments or my, just human moments, and being like, oh, Christine, like the way you snapped at that person, that was kind of cute, but like, you need to really, just that, the self-soothing and the different ways that I speak to myself, when that shifted, then everything I create in my life was more of an authentic expression of who I am. So to me, that's the distinction. The having is looking for stuff to define us. The being is knowing who we are, stepping into our full potential. And then what we create in terms of the form is an expression of that.
Well, I really love that. On this past week, I taught my mindful money workshop, and so it's a money course, and I teach people how to become rich. I mean, I really do teach a framework that allows people to build their wealth, their financial wealth. And that's great. I can give all these money tips and techniques, but really a majority of the course is about finding this place of money and meaning, where it's not about buying stuff. And to use your word, having more stuff, because then you're always buying more and always needing more. And then the more you make, the more you spend. It's just really easy to get in the cycle. So when you don't have your story for who you are and a story for what is a life of meaning, that when you know that, and it takes work with coaches, people like you, that really help us sort of get to the bottom of knowing what questions to ask ourselves and having permission to feel some pain and suffering and to have permission to not have all the right answers and just get soul search of this place of meaning, then money can take this whole different role in our lives that it no longer serves to buy stuff.
Right.
It serves this place that I call money and meaning, where money actually demonstrates what we care about.
Yep.
And it underwrites the cost of living a life that's meaningful. So then it's moving. It's not that we don't buy stuff. It's just the stuff that we do buy has a meaningful impact or aspect to living.
Yep.
So that our money what we buy with our money really is an exemplification of who we are. Versus when, like my old self too, when it was more stuff, I was defined by the car I drove and the house I lived in and the clothes I wore and the brand of shoes that I put on my feet and more status. And I was never good enough and had to compare myself against everybody else. And so it's the only way to constantly be feeding that was to buy more stuff, to have the latest of everything.
Yep.
And it's a downward cycle, endless.
Yeah.
And so, getting to this place, you're just so right on. And the way you speak, it's beautiful and eloquent of just getting one with ourselves and liking ourselves. That's huge.
And knowing, and I think money, and I know you know this, Krisstina, is our relationship with money is so tied into our self-worth. And people will say, oh, I know a lot of people that have a low image of themselves that are rich. And I'm like, yes, because they're so that is such a painful feeling of not feeling worthy that they will make millions to try to fill that void. And it works in the other polarity too. People have such a low self-worth that they can't keep, once they get money, they spend it. They don't price themselves well. They don't ask for what they are really worth in a job. And they have a terrible time attracting money. So not only do we have to really accept ourselves, love ourselves, and like ourselves, but really know our worth. And nothing makes anyone more or less worthy than anyone else. That to me comes back to some kind of, I'll just use the word spiritual because it's the most general word I can use, some sort of spiritual connection to something. Because I think what impacts self-worth most is the illusion of separation. The feeling like we're alone and we're on our own and we're not connected to anything bigger. That is a really lonely feeling. And I think I find in my work and my research with people that loneliness is directly tied to worthiness. When you feel lonely, you feel separate, you don't feel that sense of worthiness as well.
Wow. That's really good. It reminds me of different points in my own life. But but when you're on the success track, the answer is always out there somewhere. And that's that constant drive that drives us to the next, the next. And I know for me, when I had my own crisis and my illness broke me from being able to work so hard. And the second the work and the stuff and the status, and I wasn't in the spotlight and I just had to sit with myself. It was horrible.
That's the work. Yeah.
Dark, horrible place. And that's exactly what I felt, this place of loneliness and being disconnected. And that was the darkness, was that place of feeling like nobody could understand this. And I was disconnected from the universe. And that lonely place is really scary. And then it was this tapping into something more spiritual, to use that more general term, than just the stuff and all the stuff out there, which is such a defining moment. Yeah,
it's a huge defining moment. And, one of the reasons I wrote Expectation Hangover is because I want people to get excited about disappointment and those like bathroom floor moments and those dark nights of the souls, because it always offers a major opportunity for transformation. And I wanted to be able to give people the tools to not just get over disappointment, but really dive in, milk it for everything it's worth. Because any expectation hangover, which is basically things going to plan, but you're not feeling the way you thought you would, or life just throwing you a total unexpected curveball, like an illness or divorce or death or loss of job or something like that. And the tendency is to just jump in and fix it and get over it. But what happens is the same expectation hangovers just keep repeating. The cast of characters changes, the situation may change, and they keep getting more severe until you actually go in and start to do the work and deal with so much of the underlying issue. Because for a lot of us, especially high achievers, smart, intellectual people who have relied on their brain, which is tied to certainty, control. Sometimes it takes a humongous universal 2x4 smacking you in the head and losing everything that you know to go, oh, so I'm kind of like, use the smaller expectation hangovers, like start doing the work now and getting the tools. Don't wait for life to like just knock you over to get to that point. And just know if you are knocked over, like you're not alone. You know, that's like the heart of my work. I felt so alone for so much of my life. And I had parents who loved me and everything like that, but just based on what happened, and I think just sort of my soul's curriculum, that loneliness and that separation and that feeling of just being different was so painful. And one of the things that I hear from people most often is like they read something and they connect me and they're like, I feel less alone. And that just to me is like, oh, like that's what I'm here to serve people with it, because especially in our world with the illusion of connection through our devices, I feel like we live in these nuclear families. We're disconnected. We're not living in communities like we need to be, I think, in a lot of ways. And there's so much sort of, you know, showing our highlight reels on Facebook in terms of everything amazing that's going on in our life, that there's a real, again, back to that word of shame, of really sharing the vulnerability and being connected to people on a level beyond just here's everything I'm doing.
Right. When it comes to, well, you even use this term, and I really like it. It's something that really intrigued me with you. And you call it spiritual psychology. So psychology, there's just the term itself, we tend to think of neurosis or, you know, something's wrong that we're trying to fix, that we need to address. And there's even some newer science in the psychology realm that's positive psychology, and the orientation around that there is a science behind positive side of psychology, just not the negative side. But what is spiritual psychology?
Yeah. Well, I got my master's degree at a place called the University of Santa Monica. That is the only place in the world which offered master's degrees in spiritual psychology. And it was started by two amazing visionaries and just angels on earth, I believe, Ron and Mary Holnick. And they are both licensed psychotherapists and felt like the soul was left out of psychology. And it's so true. Like, again, I was on medication, diagnosed with depression when I was 10, spent many years seeing psychiatrists and therapists. And it was kind of all about talking about what was wrong and labels and me. And there was not any emphasis on God or something bigger than me. And like the inner wisdom that I had, or the wisdom beyond just my mind, right? Because our cognitive mind is only a teeny percent of our potential. Our unconscious mind, our soul, our inner wisdom, our intuition. I mean, those things are incredibly insightful and powerful. It's just that as the volume of our ego goes up, the volume of those things goes down. So spiritual psychology, in terms of, you know, what I learned at the University of Santa Monica, was really looking at every single person from a holistic level, from nothing's wrong with you. You're not broken. You're whole and complete. That is who you are. Your own unique essence is absolute perfection. And then there's this human part that we just have to deal with. And one of the things that we say there is that healing is the application of love to the places inside that hurt. So less of let's go in and analyze and fix it, but bring love and compassion to those issues, to those places that hurt, and use the wisdom of a higher power and your inner wisdom to bring healing to those. So my orientation to psychology really shifted from let me fix what's wrong with me to how do I just remember that I am whole and complete in love? And how do I love myself to heal myself rather than try to fix myself? Because I was like a constant self-improvement project.
Me too.
Constant. and I am in no way, like, I'm not going to leave here and walk on any water. Like, I am not enlightened, but I have a growth mindset. Like, my mindset shifted from fixed to growth. And so I'm consistently learning and growing, but from that little kid curiosity of, oh, what can I learn? What can I grow? Okay, something's off. Let me shift it, not let me fix it because I'm broken.
That's huge. That is huge. So thank you. One more thing, since we're getting to the end of our time together, another expertise of yours and something you talk a lot about that I find very interesting, especially right now, is sort of the generational differences and especially now between, let's say, Gen X and the millennials. And I mean, it's a pretty regular topic of conversation in different circles, especially those Gen Xers, those of us that are Gen Xers talking about, oh my God, these millennials. The millennials are probably thinking, oh my God, what the heck? So would you spend a little time talking about what you know?
I'd love to. So it's funny. My dad's a CPA and my mom's a therapist. So I'm this hybrid of the emotional woo-woo deep stuff and like the analytical, logical, side. So I'll put my more corporate hat on for a moment. So I got really passionate about studying generations because my first book was for people in their 20s and I had my quarter life crisis and I'm an older millennial. I'm kind of right on the edge there between the millennials and the Xers. And I just found like my generation had so many stereotypes about being entitled and having no work ethic. And at the same time, there was so much that I was hearing from people that worked in corporate America that they were having trouble with millennials, and generations started becoming more of a diversity issue than race or sex. Like the age differences were really showing up. And so that's when I started really studying that and speaking to corporations and brands about generational psychology. And what I have really seen is the biggest area of challenge is between Gen Xers, so 40s, early 50s, and millennials, which are basically like 20-ish to 36, 7-ish. And people think the biggest difference is between millennial and baby boomers. And although there is some conflict there, baby boomers can be, I hear a lot of them are quote unquote annoyed by millennials. Since they were the parents of the millennials, they kind of get it because a lot of them have millennials at home. But Gen Xers were raised in a time where their psychology is very skeptical. They have a very, very prove it to me mentality. And it's kind of a pay your dues, a little bit cynical, and I'm on my own. If you look at, so generations are defined by three things: parenting trends, changes in technology, and formative events. So the things that were kind of happening when Xers were growing up is there were a lot of latchkey kids. There are a lot of only children. Population-wise, Gen X is very, very, very small. Birth rates went down, so a lot of only kids, lots of staying home alone, a time when institutions were falling down. So it was very like cynical, lonely time. So that's a bit of the psychology that Xers go into, and they work hard. That's the other thing about Xers. It was like work hard, achieve, pay your dues. They're the ones who made grad school trendy. So get your degrees, work your way up. And they see these millennials come in that are like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and naive in their words and just want to make an impact. And they're so annoyed. They're just like, you just need to do your work and pay your dues and not try to take my job, basically. And again, I'm making generalizations. This is not everyone, but I think Xers are having a hard time with the very, very different workplace priorities and preferences that millennials are coming in with. And millennials are finding that they really want to be led by Xers and motivated by them and taught by them, but they're having a hard time feeling like they're getting any sort of respect from them or any kind of interest in them at all. And the other thing that's interesting about Xers is they made up the whole work-life balance term, which I don't know why there's a hyphen between work and life. Like, to me, it is all, we don't have that like separation. So it's very much like I want to go to work and do my thing, and then I want to go home. And for millennials, they want a family at work. Basically, they want to connect. They want to talk about their personal lives. They want to make contribution, make a difference, those kinds of things. So it's just, that could be a whole nother podcast, all the generational stuff. But my encouragement to Xers would be to really, think of millennials as like that younger sibling, right? They may bug you a little bit, but in a sense, they look up to you and they want your leadership and they want your attention. And yes, they need to be validated maybe a little bit more. And yes, they need to be taught a little bit differently. But I love millennials, especially like late 20s, early 30s. That's my whole team. All millennials work with me, and they are incredibly loyal and think outside the box and are so committed to making a difference. And just the enthusiasm is amazing. And yes, I may have to manage them a little differently, but it is so worth it. I don't manage them the same way that I manage myself, but that's what I need to grow as a leader to do that. And so what I say to Xers is grow as a leader, grow as a manager. Don't manage someone that in the same way you would need to. And this kind of just goes just in general human relations. The biggest expectation hangover we have with other people is we project our model of the world onto them.
Right.
Like how we would do something or how we did something or how we would respond. We expect someone to do it that way. And I'm just like, well, that's going to leave you with a big old expectation hangover.
So you've referenced Expectation Hangover many times. I know it's a book of yours, but what do you mean when you say expectation hangover?
Disappointment, basically. So when one of three things happen, either something doesn't turn out like you planned, like you launch this whole business, you think it's going to be hugely successful, then it just flops. Or something does turn out like you plan, like you get married by that age you think you're supposed to get married by, and then 5 years later you're questioning it. You're like, wait, I don't feel as connected as I thought I would. I don't feel the sense of relief, like that type of thing. Or life just throws you a curveball, like getting sick.
So you did a myth bust, and that myth was that the myth is we're always supposed to be happy, right? But no, we're not always supposed to be happy.
Right.
Some of it's just sitting with the pain, sitting with some suffering, and just sitting with it and trying not to judge it. Any other myths that you're sort of busting all the time through your work and, with your customers, your clients, your students that work with you?
The whole quick fix thing. Quick fix sells. Like just do this mantra or buy this program or create this vision board and everything will be better in your life.
Right.
And I feel so many people have expectation hangovers in the personal development business. They feel like they're failing at their own personal growth because they do one program or do one retreat or one workshop and everything doesn't change. And then they feel like a failure. And so that's one of the myths that I'm here to bust is that, as we grow, the space between expectation hangovers gets longer and the time we spend in them, like suffering in them, gets shorter. Personal growth is really the process of developing awareness and tools and then attracting situations to integrate it. So for example, let's say somebody does all this work on healing their relationship issues and they notice their whole life they attract unavailable people. And they feel like they've healed it and they've come to this place of love inside and they're really, really clear and they've got their vision board and their mantras and like feeling great about it. And then all of a sudden someone comes into their life who's married or unavailable emotionally or something. And their conclusion is, I've failed at personal growth. No. What's happening is you're getting an opportunity to integrate. So we have the awareness, we have the tools, but then we need situations to come into our life to respond differently, because true integration happens when we make different choices and choose different behaviors. So a lot of times graduation in terms of like an issue that we're healing is it coming towards us again and us having a different response to it.
We get to act differently.
We get to act differently. We get to choose differently. So it's constant evolution. It's constant practice. Life is continual school. There's not a quick fix. But again, the more work you do, the less triggered, the less reactive, the less you attract things because your vibration basically shifts.
You're so right on as well. Like we really are this culture of quick fixes.
And it sells.
And it sells, right. It so sells, exactly. Well, and it sells so well that when you do have a program that is life-changing, but it's a year, it's like, I'm not signing up for a year. Are you kidding? This program says I can do it in 14 days.
I know. Even with my book, because it's full of exercises and guided meditations, and people are like, oh man, it's a lot of work. I'm like, yes, it is. But I really wanted to give you like a thorough thing to do. But it's not sit by the beach and feel warm fuzzies immediately and, like quick fixy, because I just know it doesn't last.
Right. Well, and it doesn't work. Right. Exactly. Well, thank you. This has been so much fun. And we barely, touched the surface of many different topics. So we'll have to get together again. Well, how do people find you?
People can go to Kristine Hassler, and that's where you can sign up. I do weekly blogs and vlogs where I always teach something. I also have a podcast called Over It and On With It.
Yeah, and talk about that. So we were discussing earlier that your podcast is a little bit different, that it's not just interview style and somewhat of a more traditional podcast, but you actually have people that call in, right?
Yes. I always wanted my own radio talk show, so I just created it. And it comes from my commitment just to serve people and to really show what personal growth looks like, not just talk about it. And so people call in and I coach them live on the air. I don't know anything about them before they call. And it's usually about a 20-minute session. And then before it, I set it up, I teach something. And then after the call, I break down what I did with the person so that you're understanding why I did what I did. And everybody gets assignments and takeaways that they can have from it. Because I really have seen as a coach and facilitator that people learn really well by listening to someone else get coached. Mm-hmm. So even if the topic doesn't directly relate to you, people are learning a lot through the show. And I'm loving doing it because I'm getting to serve more people.
Well, awesome. Well, we'll make sure to link to your podcast in our show notes.
Thank you.
And any final words of wisdom?
Well, kind of going back to something that I said, if you remember one thing from the show, it would be to really honestly look at your relationship with yourself, because that is the one relationship that is most important and that you have the most dominion and choice over. So honestly look at that and, remember there's like a little kid inside of there somewhere that you might be being mean to, or that you might be telling stories that you don't need to tell anymore. Do that work, because that really shifts everything.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I was happy to be here.
All right. Thanks. Bye. Wow. What fun talking with Kristine Hassler. I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I. My biggest takeaway was really the idea of having it all versus being your all. That really stuck with me. Today, we focus so much on having more this, more that, and versus maybe more inward focus of being more, becoming more. So thank you, Kristine, for that. If you want to know more about Kristine, her coaching offers, learn more about spiritual psychology, you can find out more about her in our show notes. We've linked to all of her stuff in our show notes. And as always, if you enjoyed the episode, please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review, and tell Kristine what you thought of her interview. Next up, I interview Mark St. Onge. He's the founder of Ascena Health and now Bend Beauty. This guy is masterful, knowledgeable when it comes to skincare and overall health. We go pretty deep on this interview, so make sure you have a notebook and a pen, because I promise you're going to learn a ton about overall health, about how the cells work, and really how the from the inside out of how our skin radiates health based on our overall inside health. Total wellness. So we go in, like I said, pretty deep. You'll learn a ton. And at the end of the day, you're going to learn more about true skincare, true beauty, and true anti-aging starts from the inside out versus all this crazy expensive stuff we put on top of our skin that might be doing more damage than good. All right, that's it. Here's to living a wealthy, wealthy life. And until next time.